because this is a short time slot, I'm not going to take any more of your time. Streaming, we're up and running. All right. So please give a warm welcome to Jonathan, who will be presenting from the keyboards through the walls. Got implants for you all. All right. Anyway, please give Jonathan a warm welcome.
All right, before we begin, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to the con and especially for coming out to my talk and giving me this opportunity to present my research to you guys. And with that, can I get a show of hands how many people here have heard of or seen USB rubber ducky, USB Samurai, hardware implants like that? All right, terrific. Leave your hands up if you have used these in an op or plan on using them in an op in the field. All right, for those of you with your hands up, I would love to meet up with you guys at LobbyCon, get your thoughts and experiences, ideas. But yeah, with that, we'll kick off my talk from the keyboards through the walls. Got implant shells for y'all. My name is Jonathan Fischer. I have over 6 years of experience in the InfoSec community. All of that has been on the offensive side of things. Prior to that, I had just over a decade where I implemented, designed, and programmed industrial control systems as well as off-highway vehicle control systems. Besides that, I'm a hardware RF and IoT security enthusiast and the co-creator of the Injectalhide project. A little bit of a disclaimer here. All the views, opinions, and research expressed here are my own, not that of my current or previous employers. And with that, I'd like to introduce you guys to my NFT sales presentation. Who here wants to buy an NFT? No, just kidding. Here is the Injectalhide project with a high-level layout. On the left, you'll see the keyboard that connects to our implant, which then connects to a target computer. On the implant itself, we have onboard memory, micro SD card in this instance, and we communicate to a C2 via radio over RF to corresponding radio. Now, as you would expect with our implant, we have some standard features like key logging, live keystroke sniffing, as well as keystroke injection. We have what we dubbed insomnia mode, so here think mouse jiggler. We poll the devices for status updates, so remotely we'll see which modes are active, like keystroke recording, insomnia mode, and we do something where we poll the device to see when the last keystroke packet was detected, so we can kind of tell how long it's been since it's been used to get an idea of whether or not it's an active keyboard. We do remote memory management from the C2. So here we will push injection skips remotely. We will delete files as we see fit, as well as pull keystroke recordings remotely. And finally, we have what we call a go dark mode. So if you're in operations and you think that you are going to be detected, you can put it in go dark mode, which will delete all the files on the SD card, as well as put it into a passive mode where it'll just let keystrokes through, but it won't respond to any commands. Now, you can wake it back up with a different operational command and go back and push your scripts again, but at least then, if you feel like you're going to get caught, you're going to leave as little evidence as possible, or even if you're just going to leave it in place for a long period of time and don't feel like leaving your injection scripts and key recordings behind. So that's pretty standard what you would expect. So what makes us unique? Well, when we started designing this, we really had the idea of doing a covert and scalable network. And as you would expect and hope, we added authentication and encryption to it. But we decided to build this on mesh networking. So as you know, with mesh networking, the more devices we have, the larger the network we can get. We can shape it to go around barriers that might inhibit our reception. And we can really get it to a spot where we feel comfortable with the C2 to interact. So be it in a coffee shop around the street corner, or in a car in the parking lot, you know, use your imagination here. We use the Digimesh RF radio frequency and the IoT radios from Digi International right now. They're pretty common IoT radios, so that's why we excuse me, that's why we settled on them. We can globally broadcast a message to all devices at once saying start, stop, do whatever, right? Or just one targeted device at a time. And the documented ranges on the radios are 200 feet to ideal conditions up to 2 miles. So you can really get the idea of where you can go with this. In my basement, just off USB power with the smallest radio, I was able to reach into my garage where then I could put a repeater and then go a block away and still connect. So I got pretty good distance out of that. But again, use your imagination, right? If you're in the top floor of an office complex doing this, throw one on a drone if you have the resources, right? And build it out that way. So it leaves their options open. How do we interact with this? Well, we have a custom C2 we built with Python 3. It has 2 non-standard libraries. The first is the Digi library, which helps us interact with the radio. And then the second is the Blessed library, which allows us to build up the terminal that we interact with our reverse shell on. And speaking of the reverse shell, this is one of the things we do really unique here. To give you an idea, when we plug in our implant, we mount as a generic HID device, which is what you would expect, right? If you're injecting keystrokes, you have to be a HID device. But we also mount a COM port. And this gives us a second presence on the device. So what we do is we launch a PowerShell session in the background that attaches to that COM port. And with that, we're able to redirect all the traffic back out of the COM port through the implant over the RF into the C2. So now we have a reverse shell on the device that exists outside of the target infrastructure completely. And while that sounds great, let's actually watch it in action. Is it working? No. We lose the monitors now? And this is why I didn't do a live demo. Which, by the way, my intent was to do a live demo, but due to time constraints, I won't be able to do it. But I did bring my setup, so what's better than a live demo is hands-on demo. So feel free to find me in LobbyCon, and I'll have it all set up for you guys to play with. So let's kick off the reverse shell demo. So what you're going to see here on the left side is going to be the C2. On the right side is the target PC. So what we're doing here is we're picking the option to launch our attack from script. We're going to pick the address of the radio that we want to interact with, so the implant. And then we're going to pick the reverse shell script, which is going to launch, and what you just saw on the right is the keystroke injection. So now we have the PowerShell session in the background. So now we're going to choose to attach to that session and launch interactive terminal. So what's nice about this is that we can attach and detach from different sessions, so we're not just locked into the one we launched, and we can come back later if we want. Right now we're enumerating the desktop, looking for juicy files. And what you'll see here is that we're going to come across a file called loot.txt, which is on the right side of the screen as well. Now we really have 2 options. We can use the reverse shell if we want to extract this information, but now we know the file path, so the other thing we can do is data exfil it through a similar manner with another reverse script. So that brings me to our data exfil script. Now this is in PowerShell as well, and it's going to operate in a similar manner. It's going to go through the COM port, but in this instance, we're going to look for the specified target file, and we're going to save it as the name that's given when we launch the script. But in the background, what we're going to do is inject the keystrokes to build the PowerShell session, and the PowerShell session is going to base64 and gzip the file. Then it's going to send over the bytes through the RF, through the COM port, and then over to the C2. Here you see some debugging information as we receive the packets. And now that we know we got the file, we're going to exit the C2 and look at our local file system for the actual document, which will pop up here shortly. And there you see we have the phrase, "This is treasure repeated," and that's what we put in the file. All right, so that covers the reverse shell and the data exfil script. So what's new for Shmoo? Well, that's cool and all, right? We can data exfil to the C2, but what if we want to keep doing something? Large files take a long time to transfer. So we built another script that's going to operate in a similar manner. It still uses the COM port. We still base64 encode and gzip the file, but in this time, this instance, we're going to save it to the SD card instead. So now we can set it, forget it, go back about our business, interact with other implants, and come back later when it's on the SD card. And then this way we can either retrieve it via physical means and get the implant or the SD card itself, or we can retrieve it again later with the C2. And as the other data exfil script works, we can do this with code through the reverse shell if you don't want to launch a separate script, or you can just run this, this option as well. So we covered the new data exfil script. What else is new for Shmoo? Well, we have keyboard parsing scripts built now for the US keyboard encoding. And the way we operate our implant is when we record those keystrokes, we leave the packet data raw and we extract it later and then parse it. And the reason we do this is because we don't want to take a guess at the encoding of the keyboard, or even like if our logic's messed up, right? And we interpret those keystrokes, but we find out later the parsing script's wrong, we just lost the integrity of the original data. So we leave it raw, and we use our parsing scripts instead. So as an example, on the left side of the screen is the raw keystroke packet. You'll see that it's indicated by a K followed by a bunch of values. Now, the values, unless you're doing this every day, really don't mean a whole lot, so we need to break it down to a more verbose, readable script. And that's what our parsing script does. So we take the packet, we leave it on the left, and then we give you the verbose output on the right. So in this instance, you'll see a left shift plus a T, then the T's are released, leaving with the left shift, and then all keys are released. So this gives you a capital T, but it's a lot of information, and it's not very readable if you're trying to look for things like file paths or credentials, right? So we developed a second script to break it down with all the logic so you get the readable output. So this will help you more quickly identify the targets you're looking for. What else is new for Shmoo? Well, in the original release, when you did injection script transfers over the radio, you had to keep the line lengths to 70 characters or less, otherwise the buffer would overflow and the radio would go into an error state and drop the entire packet, as well as the rest of the injection script. So we now auto-trunk all the data, so if you want to write a 1,000-line one-liner, we'll just auto-trunk it for you, it doesn't matter. And now we also have default values in the repo for all the files. So when you download this from our GitHub repo, it'll all just work. You don't have to do any additional setup. Originally, we didn't do it that way because we didn't want people to reuse the same passwords and leave this in the wild, but we just made it something benign. So there's a lot less setup, so people that just wanted to play could play. And we've spent a lot of time since we released this updating the GitHub as well as the notations in the code. So hopefully it's more self-explanatory. You guys can pick this up and run with it. If you have questions, feel free to get a hold of me directly. I have no problem answering them. I do it all the time, as well as reach out to us on our Discord channel as well. So that's what's new for Shmoo. But what are we currently working on? What's coming, right? When we designed this, we didn't want to be inline. We wanted to be a small, targeted, implantable implant, right? So we had a radio picked out. Everything was great. COVID hit. Chip shortage hit. Bye-bye radio. So we opted to pivot and go to something workable, inline. But now we've sourced a different radio that will fit the footprint we need. So we're back on to the targeted implantable design again. The big ask that we got in Las Vegas last year at B-Sides and DEF CON when we released this was LoRa. Do you have LoRa? Well, we do now. We have the code done. We have the proof of concept done. Now we just have to put the finishing touches on a prototype PCB, and that will be released to the repo shortly as well. We are updating how we handle the memory in the implant. Right now, we initialize the SD card upon boot, and if If you have a bad SD card or it's not plugged in, what you're going to see is that the project's just going to hang. You're not going to get any interaction. So we're going to move that to a per function basis so that you still get limited functionality, right? You can still do things like live keystroke sniff without a memory card. So we're moving it that way to get more functionality. And on the flip side, we're also worried about what if you can't get a radio. We've seen people not be able to get radios due to the chip shortage too. Well, without the radio, there's no C2, no interaction. Well, with default boot modes, we're looking at adding things like just kick right directly into key recording. That way you can drop it, record keystrokes, and move on without a radio or a C2, go back later and collect your implant and at least get some usable information. Finally, back to insomnia mode, and the reason we didn't name it a mouse jiggler to begin with was because we knew we were going to expand on it. So insomnia mode doesn't have to just be a mouse jiggler. If you're worried about heuristic detection, why not throw in things like benign key presses as well, like a left shift, a right shift, a double tap to a num lock or something like that, right? Randomized timers, things like that. So we're working on expanding that as an option as well. And finally, I'm going to leave you guys with like our vision of where this can go and where we're currently, one of the directions we're currently going with this. On the left, you'll see a common keyboard. The back's taken off, and you'll see the PCB in the keyboard. If you squint real hard, you'll see that there is a header connector on that PCB as well. On the right, you'll see our mock-up of our footprint of our prototype implantable PCB. And now where we're going with this is going to be a fully plug-and-play implant where you can unplug that header connector into our implant, attach it to the existing PCB, and just put the case back on. And away you go. There's your true hit implant right there. With that, I'd like to thank my co-creator for the implant, Jeremy Miller, the EFF for working with us for responsibly disclosing our research, as well as Soldier of Fortran and Redfish for mentoring us and helping us with our project as well. If you're interested in learning more about it, you can get a hold of our public repo on GitHub. If you go to just injectal-hide.com, it'll redirect you. You'll find all of our documentation there. All the source code, all the hardware schematics, all the PCB designs, all the walkthroughs, it's all up there, as well as the injection scripts we have for the reverse shells and the data exfil. We're on Twitter. We're working on getting on Mastodon right now. And we have a Discord channel for anybody that wants to ask questions that way or wants to contribute to the community. With that, I'd like to thank you guys for coming out and open the floor to any questions. Yes?
Is there any type of keyboards that are not supported, like gaming keyboards? There's a multitude of many of them that don't work with KVM.
Right. So the question is, are there any keyboards out there that don't exist or that don't work with this currently? Right now, we haven't come across them, but we are just using our standard keyboards. We haven't gone crazy as far as gaming keyboards. My co-creator, Jeremy, has gaming keyboards, and he was able to use them as well. So in theory, no, they should all work because it's just a keyboard packet, but in reality, maybe. But to that note, like hardwired keyboards work. I use mine right now with a wireless receiver, and I'm able to intercept that off the USB of the wireless receiver as well. So wired or non-wired doesn't seem to affect us either. So any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, it's a great project by the Open Mesh Network implementation. That's awesome.
Thank you.
The only thing that I kind of have a question for you guys is if you're looking into any other ways to make that exfil a little bit quieter, because the second I'm in the sock and I see base 64 encoding and PowerShell, there you go, right?
Right. So it's a reverse PowerShell script right now, but we're kind of leaving that open to your imagination. That's the nice thing about the injection script, right? We're looking at porting it over to different scripting languages, different OSs. Oh, sorry. The question was, are we looking at doing anything else besides base 64 encoding or gzipping it? Right now we're just doing it because it's simple. But yes, we could look at other exfil tactics, and we're not limited, but we're not currently working on that, but that's something we can definitely look into and would love feedback on as well. So thank you for your feedback. All right, with that, it looks like I'm getting the signal, so if you guys have any more questions or want to play with it, or even want injectile hide stickers, come find me in LobbyCon, and I'll be more than happy to talk your ear off. All right, thank you guys.